Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you some basics about using a remote data source and how to use a back-office page template to have a nice overview of the data that you're using in your application. So let's get started. Before we are going to show some data in a back-office page, we are going to get that data from a remote data source. So imagine you have your data somewhere in a server on this nice planet, and then you want to show it in your application. Well, that means that we need to gather that data from a remote data source. And within your application, within the data model segment, you have this option to connect to a remote data source. Luckily, we can also almost immediately install some of these pre-configured data sources from our block store, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to download we're going to download the setup for a remote data source from our block store, and we're going to use that to show some data in our application, and maybe in another video we're even going to use that data in our application. So to get started, we're going to the block store, and this is where we're going to get our JSON placeholder 2.0 at the moment block. So we're going to install this block into our organization, then in our project application, there we go, and I'm going to press install to install the block. So right now, if I'd go back to my application and refresh my page, I'm going to add this to my models. So as you can see, data model, and I click on the remote model, and right now we have a new data source added, which is the JSON placeholder data source. I can click on this data source, and as you can see, this local, or this remote data source, I should say, has a bunch of models for us that we can get data from. The photo model, post model, the to-do model, album model, the comment model, and the user model. All kinds of fake data that we can use to test our application. So for today, we're going to get some users that, for example, could be front-end users for our application. And we are going to add that to our own application model. So select the user model, give it a different kind of name, because we want to make sure that we know that this is not just a user model. This is the JSON. Let's see how we're doing it. Let's call it remote. User remote. Going to add this. And right now, if we dive into our data model, as you can see the user remote data model. This is almost a model like any other. We have an email property, a name property, a phone username, and a website property. So these are this is the information we are getting. We're retrieving it from an external data source. But with these remote models also come some actions. These actions are basically to do all kinds of things with this remote data. So we can read all the remote data, we can create some remote data, delete some of the remote data, read just one record of the remote data, and update the remote data. Since we do not directly have access to the official JSON placeholder remote model, because it is from someone else, it's just some local environmental data that we can use. Not all of the functionalities will work, but if you are connecting to any of your own remote models and you've set up the proper permissions, you might be able to even delete and create new records from your application into that remote storage. For now, the most important thing for us is that we can read it and that we can have a look at that data. So you can click on these actions and see how these actions are configured. In this case, we start, so the action has already been pre-configured for us, and a name and some parameters are being parsed through. And then an action step says get placeholder data. This allows us to read the data from the remote data source. As you can see, it has a name, all user, it parses the params, and it gives us a result. Well, this is all just to make sure that this remote data source can function in our application. So now let's create a back office that is going to show us all of these users. So first things first, let's have a look at what these back office pages are exactly, because we've already been working with some if you've been following the rest of the advanced path as well. but we have some configuration. The email configuration page, for example, is a back office page. We also have the web user management page. This is also a back office page. So what I would like to do right now is add a project user page to our project. So let's go and create a new page. This is going to be a back office page, and the goal of the page is going to be project users. And we're also, you know what, I'm also going to call it the project users page. We're going to use the web user authentication for now. Maybe in the future we'll change this, but that doesn't matter at the moment. So let's create a page. Let's leave the partials as they are. And we're going to use the remote. You can see this by the icon. It's like some remote model icon. It even has, if you hover over it, a nice little pop-up that says remote model. So press select. And now we can decide what we want to show within this remote model data table. So I want to show the name of the user, the email address, and I'm going to leave it at this for now. So the name and the email address. And I'm going to press save. And now my back office template will be generated. So the nice thing about back office templates is that these can be used to view and to manage the data in your application. So you are working on a bunch of front-end stuff, you have a page for projects, you have detailed pages for projects, but maybe as an application admin, you would like to manage all this kind of data and would like to have one big overview for that. Well, this is where the back office templates come in handy, because these are just simply amazing to have and manage and have a nice overview and manage the data of your projects. So it's almost completely done. We almost have this project users page. Let's dive into configuring it a little bit so that we can also access it, and then we can test it, and it immediately works. Navigating through the back office, not only web users and email configuration options are reachable, we also should be able to reach the project users, of course. So let's open up the project users overview. And here you can see something which is called a wrapper. A wrapper is, well, as the word says, a wrap around the entire page that allows us to have some simple editing options for the entire page. This is amazing if you're configuring something for citizen developers that just want to make some quick changes to your page but don't want to dive into all details. However, we do need to touch the details. And in that case, we can press the edit partial option and it opens up the side menu. It looks a bit odd right now because it zooms in on the entire width of the page. Normally it only has about 20% of the width because we're using a side menu, but that's not what we're here for. We're going to add a list item, a menu item to our page. So we're going to duplicate the email configuration one and we're going to change this around, called project remote project users. I like that word. It's sounds a bit fancy. Gives me the idea that there's a bunch of people using my application, and that's what I like. And it navigates to project users. So there we go. We have our project users, and what kind of icon are we going to give it? Do we have people? Multiple people? There we go. We have a multiple. Oh, this is nice. So we have a wonderful side menu popping up right now. And let me have a look. So right now we have our page. We're not going to change anything within the page yet because the only goal for us is to show some names, show some emails, navigate around. And well, then we have already set up our first back office page. And per model, I would usually always advise add a nice project overview, add a nice, well, whatnot. And here you go. It's going even faster than I imagined. We have our remote project users, and these are all the users that have been imported via the JSON placeholder data source. So these are users that we could, for example, show in our front end, which we're doing right now, but we could even add them to our own project as users. So that's something that we're going to do in another video. For now, we know how to simply set up a back office page, how to generate a back office page, and we can add this for our project overview and for our tasks as well. So as an admin, for example, you can have a lot of tasks popping up and you can have a lot of projects popping up and have that in this nice overview. For now, in the next video or in the next remote data source user video, depends on how you watch the advanced path, we are going to add these users to our application. Because right now, these are just, well, users that are showing around here. But I am not allowed to change anything because these are users from a remote data source. I do not have permissions to change them in that database. So what we could do is we could import the users that we have from this remote source and actually use them in our own database. And that's what we're going to be doing in another video. So set up your own back office, have a look, set up the back offices for your projects and tasks as well, or maybe any other items that you've added to your project management application. And I'll see you in the next video.